All right, we are live with Kit Bate at Academy. How you doing, Kit?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Dude, it's always a pleasure talking to you in kind of this pre-interview process. I'm so stoked about just your approach that you take on the mortgage process. And, we've worked together for quite some time. I remember running into you at the airport. You were coming back from a coaching program
Yep.
or like an event. And it was cool, dude. Just everywhere you go, you bring the intensity, you have the intent. I love it, dude, whether it's at the
Chasing me
airport, in the
down at the
office.
airport.
I love it, dude. It's killer. But I'm so stoked to have you on. I want to talk a little bit about your team, your processes. You're probably one of the most efficient loan officers that I've had the opportunity to work with. And my first question for you, is structuring your team. How did you go about structuring your team, and why did you do it that way?
Um, Structuring the team, it's really designed for, obviously, for growth. Anyone that's trying to grow, you got to be able to delegate some of the tasks in order to really focus on doing what you're really good at more of the time. And that's, getting business, sitting down with clients, structuring loans, not necessarily doing paperwork, making follow-up phone calls, things like that that other people can do. And for a long time, my biggest platform was lead follow-up. Like, I always tout myself, I've yet to come across somebody that follows up the way that I do with leads, long term. And so it got to a point where I was doing such a good job of that I get referred a ton. And so then I have a ton of leads, and now I'm having to really kind of figure out when I can fit in some follow-up time to get to all of the follow-up that I was doing. And so that was kind of the first step in growing was hiring someone, building a team so that I could still follow up like a boss, but do it on a huge scale with way more people.
Yeah.
So brought someone in, had them shadow me for 2 weeks. I had them listen to me on the phone, and explained why I was saying what I was saying. And then I listened to them for 2 weeks so that I could critique them, say that was good, but I would do it this way too, add this in, say this here. And really just recreated that part of me. Because for a long time, a lot of times people are afraid to give up and afraid to delegate because it's not you. It's like, no, they're not going to be able to do it as good as I am, and it's like, well, what is it you're trying to delegate? Is it paperwork? You're not the king of paperwork. Everyone else can do the paperwork, right? So, so things like that. So I recreated myself for the lead follow-up, which was a big piece of my business for a long time. And so the things that I do really well, I'm focused on growing and building systems and building a team around making sure that the whole experience, the whole way through for the client is at a high level. And because everybody has those experiences where it's by accident, there's man, that person loved me, we did such a good job for them. And then the other 9 out of the 10 transactions are you're scrambling all the time, you're all over the place, they're ticked off, they're calling you all the time, trying to get an update, and you're like, well, I'm waiting to hear from somebody so I can give them an update, so I'm going to screen their call. And so putting into place a team so that the whole experience is great. So I think you've got to be able to, one, know how to do a good job first.
Yeah.
Some people don't know how to do a good job yet, and they don't have systems, and they don't know what they're going for, and they're just like, well, I'm just going to hire somebody. And it's like, for what? You got to clearly define why you're hiring them, what you're going to have them do. So,
Dude, I think you nailed it. I mean, that was probably if you could critique my experience in trying to build a team, I think you nailed it on multiple points, right? I mean, so many people are misguided in the process of actually trying to build a team. They don't know why, and they personally don't deliver a great experience yet. So, how are you going to replicate? Are you just going to replicate a negative experience by building out a team, right? Yeah. So I think that you nailed it on the head there. And in my line of work, obviously it's a lot different than the mortgage side, but we are hyper-focused on the customer experience. And sometimes it's the little things that I never thought of that have really my team's been able to run with and improve the overall customer experience. And that's one thing that I've been open to as well, is once you kind of build the team, allowing for that ingenuity and creativity, that maybe it goes beyond just us as dictators, right? It starts to evolve into a collaborative effort. So I think that you nailed it on multiple fronts there. And I think it's cool the way that you've kind of structured your team based upon providing a great experience and then focusing on one specific thing that you want to provide, which was a lead gen follow-up, right?
Yep.
Everybody that I know, including myself, we try to do too much with too little, right? You hire one person and you expect them to do everything that you do. It doesn't work out that way. So I think that you nailed it on that one. And, other loan officers and real estate agents in the industry, I was telling you, I just got off a video yesterday with a real estate agent who was telling me kind of their problems and struggles with trying to build a team. Like we talked about, there's a lot of misguidance there. What advice would you give? What would you recommend to a loan officer or real estate agent who's trying to take that first step in building out their team and building out their productivity?
I think obviously you've got to have consistency there, and so the consistency comes from having good communication and good follow-up.
Yeah.
Like there's realtors and there's loan officers that will blow it away one month and then the next month like have no business, and then blow it up and then nothing, and they go through this cycle, and it's that way because they're inconsistent with what they're doing, and that stems from time management. And so being able to stay on task and have a set routine where like each day you're going through, exactly what you're going to do and you stick to it. It's like, I'm not going to take phone calls. I'm not going to solve problems right now because now is my prospecting time. And now is my update time. So I'm going to call everybody and give them an update. I'm not going to get interrupted with emails and stuff. I'm going to close my emails. I'm going to, not ignore phone calls. There's nothing that's going to, the world's not going to come to an end in the next hour. I'm going to just focus on this. People don't do that. And so, everyone's always going for the squeaky wheel. And so I think if you can get to a point where you've got systems and time management where you can stay disciplined on that level, then you start to see that consistency that's coming there, and then that consistency starts to take off because the amount of volume and the amount of business that you're actually closing is going to be increasing, and then that helps you to be in a good situation, in a good spot where then it's like, okay, well, I know I can afford to hire someone to come in. I know I've got enough to keep them busy when they are coming in. They are in the office for 40 hours a week, and a lot of people, because they don't have the discipline and the vision, like we were talking about, of knowing exactly what you're going to have them do, how you're going to train them, what pieces of the business they're going to take over. They don't know that, and then they don't have the discipline to stay consistent to keep the business at a level where it justifies having a team. So I think that's a big thing is consistency and vision. I think you gotta be real clear on those things.
I think that, personally, that's where I probably made mistakes in the past is, I've been doing this for almost a decade, and some of my very first hires that were dedicated to going out and growing our business, it was like every month the game plan would change, right? Because we were growing so fast. And at the time, it didn't hurt, right? But the inconsistency and the lack of vision on where specifically we want to go, it was painful. And that happens when you're growing a team. And so I think that that's probably, really solid advice for a lot of new loan officers and real estate agents, because it's easy to get lost in the fray or in the minutia. Because when you're growing, you're busy. Things are moving fast, right? There was probably a period in your career where you went from doing X amount a month to maybe double, right?
Right.
And it's not a clean dotted line to get there. You're not following the GPS. It can get crazy.
Yeah. So, and I think something that comes to mind while you're saying that is when it's getting busy and it's starting to get crazy, and you don't have that team where you can just delegate and offload stuff to, keeping a list of what you would delegate and offload. And so that when you're in it and you're just like, man, if I had somebody right now, write that down. And then all of a sudden you create this job description And then you've got that clear vision so that when you are ready to hire somebody, it's like, here you go, you're doing this. Like, you got to put together. And then that gives you something to focus on so that when they do come in, you're like, okay, for this is how you do it. So you know what you're training towards, and not just like, hey, sit around and wait for me to give you something to do for 40 hours a week. And I'll tell you, and then you go through, you got the same chaos in your life and in your business. And then you're just like, hey, can you do this? Oh yeah, I'll try and figure that out. But you never told me how to do that before. So I think that's part of it is pre-hiring, creating that detailed job description, and just keeping track of the things that drive you nuts, the things that you wish someone else could really be focused and dedicated to, that you always just kind of cut corners and do it as fast as possible instead of really being thorough and doing a good job.
Man, you nailed that. In fact, that might be like the clip that we really promote on this thing, because that's the pre-hiring checklist, the pre-hiring. I love that concept. I mean, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that would have saved me so much headache and time knowing what specifically I was looking for. So that, I mean, you nailed it. And I know, in fact, they're probably going to watch this video. If you are watching this video, I know who you are. You're dealing with this right now for sure, because you call me and you tell me about it. So that. Well,
and it's good too to have that while you're hiring somebody, so that when you're like, hey, are you a good person? Yes. Okay, you're hired. It's like, no, here's what you're going to do every single day. Do you want this job? Or are you going to get into it and be miserable and then be looking for another job, and then I'm going to have to go through this process again? So creating that for you, creating it for them, so that there's just clarity on all levels.
Dude, you nailed it. And you know what? I think that your team really exhibits a lot of consistency there. I called you last week just to tell you how freaking amazing your team was on so many different levels. They've made my job look really easy. They made Ben's job practically obsolete. They for him. And another piece of kudos, I was talking to one of your realtor partners this morning. He was ranting and raving about the communication, the consistency. So, you definitely, in my opinion, you do what you preach, and it's pretty cool to watch how that's evolved.
Well, thank you.
One thing that's kind of cool is this video idea kind of stemmed from another video that you did with, I believe, the CEO of Academy, where you guys were talking about your prospecting efforts. And it was a simple concept, but the way that you were talking about it was one of those things where it hits you and you go, God, why am I not better at that? And so I wanted to touch on that, if you wouldn't mind maybe rehashing what your prospecting system looks like, because there are a lot of us who are less disciplined than you who could probably benefit from hearing that again.
Yeah. So it's real simple. It's just, I think for everybody, it's just a matter of figuring out who you want to prospect to, and then dedicating time to that. And so for me, each day of the week, I've got a theme. I've got a set group of people that I know I'm going to be calling. So obviously as a lender, I'm going to be calling my realtor partners to give them updates on their leads, on their files that we've got in process. So I dedicate time to doing that on Mondays is the time that I do that. Tuesdays, I'm calling and updating. I'm giving update phone calls, but I'm using that as prospecting, where I'm calling to update the clients, but also update and ask for any referrals that they have. That's a huge miss on everyone's part, is just asking for a referral from someone you're already working with, because you're talking to them anyways. But just throwing in there, hey, by the way, who else have you talked to? On Wednesdays, I'm going through leads and calling and following up with just leads that aren't quite under contract to buy a home. And again, asking them if they've talked to anyone else along the way that we can be helping, checking in with credit stuff, see how things like that are going. On Thursdays, I've got past clients that I'm calling. So I go through and I've got a list of clients that I'm calling for an hour just to check in on them, ask them if they talk to anyone else I can help, if they need anything. And then on Fridays are just VIPs, which are just basically database people. So, people that are in my neighborhood, from church, from, just people at work, my underwriter, my closer, people like that are already involved in my business. I'm just calling them to check in, see how they're doing, wishing them a happy birthday, and really just going deep with relationships all across the board. When you've got that consistency, you're checking in with them once a week or once a month, whatever the system is, then you can have a real relationship. And it's not always asking for business, because you get to a point where you've programmed them to know, oh, if Kit calls me, I got to make sure to tell him about this person. I just call him like, hey, just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Hope you're having a good day. Oh, that's so nice of you to remember. Hey, by the way, I talked to a friend at work, or, they bring it up, and I don't have to bring it up anymore because I've been consistent with that. And that's where, that time management, going back to that, like, that's where everybody fails. It's like everyone hears this stuff, but like 99% of people won't do it because they don't know how to manage their time. They're not dedicated to that specific task at that moment. They're dedicated to whatever could make them the money the fastest. And sometimes the phone rings, and so then it's like, okay, well, I got to go jump on that because that's going to make me money now, and not realizing, okay, well, if I do this consistently for a month, for 2 months, for my whole career, then I'm going to make this much money forever. And then it's easier to delegate and offload tasks that are going to make you money now, and stay focused on what's really the long-term investment of your time. So.
Yeah. See, I love that, because I think a lot of people really like to subscribe to that idea. But one thing that you talked about was the programming of the people that you're calling. Really, it's from my experience, people hesitate about the phone call because they feel like it's repetitive. They feel like they don't know what they're going to say. They feel like they don't have things to talk about.
Yep.
And, we went through an expansion in the last 2 years, and we now have people out doing their own prospecting, and they have the same concerns and frustrations. They'll say things like, well, I just don't know what to say anymore. And it's like, well, at a certain point, you're not, like you said, programming the conversation. You're not helping that person understand the value of why you're calling. Because if you're always just calling for referrals, if you're always just calling for the same thing, usually those people stop answering your phone calls.
Yep.
Right? But if you can program value and intent into that conversation, and they know that when you call, there's going to be value that comes from it, you're going to have a higher likelihood that that person is going to both engage and refer business. And that's so I love that concept. I'm going to clip that out too and give that to my sales guys, because that's a big one. And I know that there are a lot of realtors and a lot of loan officers out there that probably just don't. In fact, let me give you the best example. Calling your credit challenge clients. Nobody likes to do that. That's a very difficult phone call, right? But oftentimes the people who work their credit challenge clients while they're working in our program, their pull-through rates are double what other people's are when they don't communicate with them, right? The pull-through to contract and close. And so, that's a big game, or a big one, is programming the value so that the individual sees that, they answer, and they connect you with the potential referral. I love that a lot.
Yep. Well, and it's a matter of, if you're doing that and you're providing that value even to the credit challenge people, then the clients see that. They haven't got that before. They talked to 5 loan officers and all of them said, no, you don't qualify. Call me when your credit's better. And that's the extent. And so when you do that for them, then they see the value. So they want to refer their friends and family to you. And so it's not just that one individual. And then the same thing goes for loan officers that are trying to provide real value to a realtor and build a relationship, getting all the business from the realtor. When you're doing that for their clients, then the realtor wants to send everyone over to you, because it happens for me all the time where, I'll send someone over to you, and a plug to you is the system you have with your team works real well with me and what I do with the follow-up side of things, so that I know what's going on, so I can convert, 6 months, a year, 2 years later. Sometimes I'm calling up the realtor saying, hey, I got your guy qualified. And they're like, who?
Yeah.
and they'll act like it happened to me just the other day. Like the guy's like, it was a realtor. He sent me one lead. It was a bad lead. That's, realtors, that's what they do initially to test us is they send us the bad leads that someone else already said they couldn't get approved for. And it was like, send over an update to him. And he's like, he couldn't even remember who I was. He's like, I don't think this is mine. And we're like, yeah, it was. You sent us one bad deal to try us out. Here we are 18 months later. We've got him going. He's like, what?
Yeah.
And so he's like, how do I how do I get on your list? And he's like, and I'm like, dude, just send your stuff. We'll do that. This is what we do for everybody. It's not just this one lead. This is what we do. We've got a system. So anyways, kudos to you for your help in that whole process and following up. And that's why I love having you as part of it, is because then I know, and my realtors know, that I've got a system to take care of people. Obviously there's the ones that aren't going to ever do anything. But the ones that need help, want help, I've got a system in place. So if credit's here, this is what I do. If it's there, this is what goes on. This is when we follow up. This is how many times we follow up. And if they're ignoring us and they're not making progress, this is when we cut it off and say, okay, we'll move on. But just having a flow to it, and having the right people on the bus, having the full team all the way through, not just here in my office, but having a good setup with realtors, having a good setup with credit, having a good setup with just everyone involved with the whole transaction. So anyways.
Yeah, I love it, dude. You nailed it. And I'm 100% going to take that prospecting thing to heart. That and the pre-hire checklist, that's going to be an immediate staple of our business. I think that is, I've done 3 interviews today for new employees. I'm not doing another one until I go back to my team and say, okay, what are we hiring for again? So you nailed it, kid. I got to tell you, you're so much fun to work with. You're an amazing advocate for clients. You provide such a top-notch customer experience every time. And, your team, major kudos. Again, they do such an amazing job really elevating that process.
Yeah, they take care of me.
I can't thank you enough for doing this video, man. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're watching this video and you have questions for Kit, I'm sure you're cool for realtor loan officer reaches out. I'll put Kit's contact information in this. If you're a client, I'm sorry if this was maybe confusing, but obviously Kit is one of the best, and I highly recommend that you reach out to him. And then obviously if you have credit challenges, we're here to help. But Kit, thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Okay.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.